It's February the 23rd, 2022. And so I guess we've had the first moves in the great Ukrainian chess game. Putin moved out a pawn, and I guess uh, Biden moved his pawn out too. And now we're waiting. I don't know what's exactly happening right now, but it looks like right now we're in a big wait and see. Russian tanks did cross over the border on the 22nd, I guess, and was or and basically moved up to some position. And so far as I can tell, there's been no contact between them and the Ukrainian military. I mean, I've been following the reports as good as I can, and it doesn't look like anything happened. There's a serious full mobilization of Ukrainian reserves, which seems kind of appropriate in the circumstances, I guess. And we're kind of waiting to see what Putin's next move is, I guess. It certainly hasn't started the way it was predicted by the Biden administration, who had predicted this massive airstrikes, rocket. Even I thought it'd be a little bit more dramatic than this. But perhaps I guess the borderline was one where Biden said, "Thou shalt not cross." So Putin simply crossed it to see what would happen. And as he's now evaluating what the effect of that's going to be on his system and trying to calculate what the next move will be. I assume that since there's a lot of consultation with our allies going on, that he probably has spies in some of those countries and is getting feedbacks for how they're reacting to it, how far they're willing to go. I mean, certainly if you look at the most conservative Republicans in this country, man, they're ready to do just about anything they can think of. And then they kind of go, oh, there could be cyber warfare, and we do have vulnerabilities. So we don't know exactly what anybody's going to do yet. We presume there'll be more economic sanctions to come. And as I tweeted out yesterday, Biden's is making a list and checking it twice just to find out who's naughtiest, because none are nice. So we'll have to see which oligarchs get on the list next, and what other businesses or efforts get sanctioned. By the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe. Give me a like to help out with the algorithm. I appreciate any comments anybody makes. I know I've posted these on social media, and some people have made some comments one way or the other. But I think one I can think of fairly favorable, one I can think of fairly negative. So anyhow, but I try to be as accurate as I can be, given the information a person out here has. Basically, the situation, I guess, to some degree is, since it's now revealed that we've gotten something like, nearly 18 million barrels of oil from Russia last year or something. Oh, excuse me, I think that's per month. I'm sorry, times 12. Because we've not been keeping the oil production up to the level it was prior to the COVID crisis. And remember, there's been a lot of effort on the part of the administration to retard oil production and cancel a major pipeline, which I'm not sure if that had been operational yet anyhow. But the point is that, I guess we're going to have to, are we going to sanction Russian oil too and quit taking it so that we'll run up our gas prices a bit? The market themselves are kind of going up because of just the anticipation in the futures markets. I don't think anything material has actually happened yet, but the futures anticipate, and that has an impact on the pricing and so forth, which is somewhat real because there's probably a lot of hedging in the futures. I won't get into that sort of thing, and just to say that people that don't know it seem to think things about it that aren't exactly the way things really work in the system. But that's kind of anticipated. The real issue, like I've said in previous videos, for Putin, though, is, does he really want to take over the whole country and therefore probably create a pretty significant mobilization on the part of NATO? I mean, if he actually goes all the way to the Polish and Romanian borders, I think there's going to be a tendency that we're going to have to deploy some extra troops into that region as a deterrent. To put a clear-cut, line of demarcation down that you will not cross this without actually starting a war. with us, that is. And on the other hand, the Dnieper River, I think it's how it's pronounced, could be the a clear geographic line that he could move up to, leaving most of Ukraine and most of the highly anti-Russian Ukraine, on one side of the river and his people on the other side. Although there's going to be a lot of patriotic Ukrainians that are going to be in his area too, that will probably still be prepared to wage a bit of guerrilla warfare. And in fact, that's the main problem I see, is he could have a somewhat bloody crash with the regular Ukrainian army, but he probably will be able to defeat it with overwhelming firepower and a lot of collateral damage too, for that matter. But the problem after that is there's a lot of weapons floating around in Ukraine at this point, including a lot that some interesting ones that we provided, like the Javelin missile and some anti-bunker munitions that can also be used against soft armored vehicles like their armored personnel carriers. And I suspect they still have a fair number of RPG-7s and stuff of that sort in their own inventory. So the result is that they're going to probably find themselves in a guerrilla conflict that will, just think about how quickly the United States occupied Iraq during the Second Gulf War, and then think about the years afterwards, what it took to kind of tame the thing down. And at least we had the advantage that we were trying to get the majority population of the country, the Shia, in a voting democracy of some sort, as much as they could have one. Let's don't play up the word democracy here, but at least it wasn't the kind of iron dictatorship they had under Saddam Hussein, and try to get them, active and participating, which they were initially a little bit reluctant to do anything, and eventually they kind of stepped up, I guess. But even then, they weren't that strong. When the ISIS came wheeling in, they all kind of collapsed. But then a lot of that was because of the kind of corruption you normally have in these systems, where proper supplies weren't provided to units that weren't from the right families and so forth. And on with that, why it collapsed, but it did collapse pretty abruptly, and we had to go back in to run them back out again. So it is. So I'm not going into great depth, but you get the idea that when they get into this thing, it gets a lot worse. And here, I don't think they're going to have as much friendliness, except in the areas maybe that they're already in right now. So, and we'll be maybe a bit further, but it's still, I think, as you get deeper into Ukraine, the population is going to have a higher and higher component of anti-occupation sentiment, and there was going to be guerrilla resistance. Enough said about that, guys. We're just waiting to see what the next move is and kind of what happens. On another topic I want to kind of discuss here that I haven't said much about, but the situation up in Canada is getting a little bit alarming, in my opinion, too. I know people are kind of throwing a lot of pretty hot rhetoric around, but it does seem to me like the Trudeau government has gone a bit far. They had essentially a kind of a peaceful Occupy type, protest, and I think, while on the one hand, I can see why at some point they would definitely want to clear the protesters out. Other actions being taken, like freezing bank accounts, arresting people and holding them without bail, and treating these people like they're actually violent terrorists, that is just really over the top. And it looks like, in general, there's an increasingly lack of freedom in Canada. This is, kind of going to a level that's really not acceptable for the kind of thing that's happening there. I just want to put in my 2 bits to say that I'm opposed to it too. I don't know. And of course, this administration is not, the Biden administration, that is not going to do much about it or say much about it, obviously, since they're all buddies. But that is a kind of a alarming situation. Already the kind of things that we're doing during the COVID crisis seem to be a bit on the excessive side, perhaps not quite as excessive as Australia, but which kind of shows you one thing about the U.S. constitutional system of checks and balances, that there is a lot more freedom here than there is there. Really, they don't really have a First Amendment at all. There's attempts in our country with cancel culture to erode the First Amendment, But so far, this hasn't really turned, for the most part, into legal issues with the government prosecuting it and stuff like is up there. And that's already the situation. And I just thought I'd kind of make a few comments to, register my opposition to what Trudeau's doing as well. I think there's a tendency to kind of oversay now it's a dictatorship, which I think is a little bit extreme. But there are shades of that starting to emerge, I think. And let's hope that the next election removes Trudeau from power, and maybe somebody a little bit more civil rights oriented maybe gets involved, gets elected, because this is not too good. Well, anyway, I'll close this for now, and until next time, we'll just have to wait and see what happens next in Ukraine and other issues. By the way, my social media accounts, the addresses of them are below, and until next time.